What I'm going to discuss in this video becomes very important for setting up your team heading towards the big round 13 bye. Round 14 and round 17 and 20 are going to be just as hard considering it's coming off those big byes and you want to be fielding 17 or close to it in those matchups. I'm not actually sure which rounds will be worse. That round 13 where 7 teams are out, or round 14 when 3 are out, but you have to field 4 extra players. So I'm very, very excited to find out, that's for sure. But in this video, we're going to be going through that bye schedule, but I wanted to jump into footystatistics.com and show you something that I haven't used too much, and it's especially important come this time of the year. There's been 6 rounds now, and it's finding out the best averages for all our positions. So last week I went through on the NRL Fantasy app, and that shows you the pricing for the guys and everything like that. But what you can do here is just select all of the different positions, and we're going to go through them one by one like we did last week. And you know, with the hooking position is very, very tough. And you look here at the top averages for the season, and it's the top 3 guys, and then it's clear daylight. Now that we've lost Jayden Brailey, very, very sad news for Brailey there, and also Adam Doueihi, as we spoke about in that previous video there. But just, you know, really, really light in the hooking stocks here. You've obviously got that top 5 with, you know, Grant, Cook, Robson. They're the 60 plus point guys. And then you've got Jeremy Marshall-King, who's like half an option, but he's never really done it long term, and he's never been one of those guys that's been super consistent. So he's a bit of a risk if you were to pick him up, and you're not getting him at much of a discount when he's about that 700k mark. So that's that with Jeremy Marshall-King. You got Reed Barney, who's very up and down. He had 3 bad ones in a row, and people were like, oh, I got to get him out of my side. And he was the best scorer last week. And then Wade Egan's had 2 concussions and is going to be out for at least the next game. And, you know, doesn't really have a nice low break even either. So everyone under that, you really don't want to be looking too heavily in as sort of your keeper. So what it looks like here is guys like combinations like Harry Grant and Robson. If you expect Robson not to play Origin, is probably going to be the best play there. It would have been Harry and Brailey, just have that slightly cheaper guy and you can use the money elsewhere. But you see a lot of the top teams with Grant and Robson. I think that's the play. If you're to go Cook and Robson as well, that's going to work out okay, considering Cook's going to be out in round 13 as well. So either one of those 3 is going to be the play. If you don't have enough money to go to either of those guys, then, you know, Jeremy Marshall-King and Reed could be that, you know, semi-decent option. Jeremy Marshall-King plays in 13. Reed doesn't. So that's something to think about there. But really, having a mixture of those top guys is going to be the best play heading into that bye period. Let's have a look at the mids, because, you know, hook and position, we'll speak about some of the cheapy guys in Sonny Luke and potentially who might play for Jayden Brailey in that buy, hold, risk it, sell video with Scoop. Let's move to that mid section. And you look here and there's multiple guys averaging 60 plus. So in the hooking position, there's 3. Well, pretty close with Robson at 59.5, but in the midsection, you do have 5, and that does include Jermaine Hopgood, who a lot of us are probably looking at selling this week with the minutes that he got last week, the output that he provided, but also having Junior Barlow coming back there in this upcoming week in round 7. So really, there's 4 guys in that position, and Madison's only played a few games, and I know a few picked him up last week and picked up that awesome 60 there. Payne Haas at 68, Yo at 64, Murray at 63. You look at those 3 guys and they're all going to be in Origin. Madison's a chance of playing some bench Origin, I would imagine, as well, especially with, you know, Angus Crichton slowly coming back into the fold. I doubt he gets picked, so maybe Maddo's that guy that they use, and I really think they should use Maddo. He's a great man in the middle there for, I think he would do well for in the Origin arena, and can cover, obviously, middle edge, a few different positions there for sure. Then you go to guys like Josh King, and he hasn't scored this well long term, and he could potentially drop down a little bit. Joey Tarpany's still going to be a great option. Carrigan, people are looking to move on. So really, everyone else in that top position, you want to have at least 1 to 2 of these guys, at least all the way up until Origin. Then you can kind of make some decisions there on a few of these other guys like Tarpany, like Josh King, like Tohu Harris if he's back. So it might be moving down slowly to a couple of these, you know, just below the top tier guys. But right now, it's really important to have a couple of these top players there: Haas, Yo, Haas, Murray, Haas, Madison, and those and the like there. If you are holding Taps, hopefully he's back next week. But then he has a buy in round 8, and I'd be looking to pick him up in round 9. There is my general thoughts. So that's the mid position. Again, we'll speak about a lot of the medium to lower tier guys in the other video, but in this one, just wanted to focus on them. Then you look at the edge position, and this is a spot there where there's a lot of guys in the 50s, but no real top scorers. And Hosking's only done it for 3 games, but he's a 69. Isaiah Papali'i is one we want to look at, and we spoke about Hopgood already. So Papali'i, Fifita, they're the kind of next top tier guys, and then you have Frizzell coming on really, really good and doing a great job. It shows you here that Eli Katoa is down in the 9th position there, so 51.8 is his average, and it looks like you probably just hold him. Guys like Trent Loiero, probably one you want to potentially move on a little bit earlier than Ellie, just because he is providing really good scores in that edge position. So a mixture of all these guys. Obviously, you got Jacob Preston as well on your side, and potentially Cardi, Jack Bird. They're all in that top 15, which is really nice to see. So I don't see a clear need to pick up any of these gun edges at the moment. I think eventually we're gonna have to move on from Cartwright and guys like Trent Loiero, Preston or Eli Katoa. One of them probably stays in your team longer term, but guys like Fifita definitely going to be an option. Isaiah Papali'i, I'm really looking at probably after their bye or after their second bye. So in that sort of middle of the origin period is where we're looking at someone like that. But they're all potential options. At this point, there's not a heap of guys in this team that would be looking at Origin. You've got Colin Matangi, who might make it. Liam Martin will be there for sure. Frizzell is done with Origin, so he's someone that plays in 13 that could be an option for you. And very surprisingly, Lockie Fitzgibbon continues to be consistent there at this point of the year. You got Satili Tupanua returning, Angus Crichton potentially as well soon. So Nat, does he become less of an option? Tommy Gilbert's a bit up and down. So there's plenty of conjecture in this edge position. Whilst it's been such a great position for us all year, it's going to be interesting longer term how that plays out. You look at the halves now, and obviously there's some clear top guys. Toby Sexton moves into above Nathan Cleary, so obviously he's a better option than Nath at this point of the season. What a game that was for Toby. Very happy for him, that's for sure. So Nico Hines, obviously the clear best option at the moment, him and Cleary. And the question this week is it worth it for you to spend the $1 million just over that to pick up Hines rather than spending some money in other positions? So maybe you go for a hooker instead of second gun hooker, rather than going for that extra half if you're sitting there with the mixture of the Cleary, Johnson, Moses, Munster, DCE, Reynolds, Sammy Walker, those types of players there. Do you spend that money to go up to one of those top tier guys like a Heinze, or do you go to a top tier hooker? So that's the thing you need to think of here. A lot of these guys averaging really well. We have 6 guys averaging over 60, and if we take Toby out, that's 5, with DCE just under that at 59. Moses, I still think, is a great option heading into this week. He's going to be that little bit more expensive. Thankfully, not too much after his low score last week, but a really great one in the week just gone. And they have a really nice run coming up. So I can see Moses really dominating that one, playing left and right a little bit, and just having the ball on a string a lot of these games. So he's a very interesting one. And as I said, do you pick up Heinze? But there's a lot of great players in here. Even Cody Walker's on the up as well. You've got obviously our good man from the Dogs there as well. I can't even remember his name at the moment. That's all right. Matty Burton. Good memory. God, must have had a bad sleep to last night. But there's plenty of good options there. Dewey would have been one as well, but unfortunately his ACL has cooked that plan as well. And Benny Hunt, he's probably a little bit one of those guys that I think you need to stay away from. I can't believe I forgot Matty Burton. There you go. Good to see that on the video. We move on to the center position. And this is a very tough one. If you're looking at prices, I was having a quick look at these guys, and majority of these top bunch will be over 600. Tungo will be over that as well. He was just a tad under that. Hammer's going to be the one that's a little bit down on that, so he's the cheapest of the bunch. Even Will Petacini averaging really well. He's going to be up close to that 600 as well. Val Holmes just over 600. Farnworth up there close to that as well. So most of these guys in this position are sitting around that price, and which one do you pick? Jack Bird doesn't play in he plays in 13, so he's an interesting one for sure. Guys like Gagai, Graham potentially can make Origin. You've got Bird, who won't, as I said. So Ramian, who won't as well. So he's a sneaky one. I think they have a buy in round 13 as well, which we'll look at in a sec. But they're all the potential options in that position if you're looking forward towards round 13. I really do think you need to have one eye on the first couple of buys, the 13 and 14. Sort of anything before that, 10, 11, 12. You've got the Knights, Dolphins, and also the Warriors in those 3 games. Not something you need to stress too much over, but it's the ones after that. Really only round 9 you might have to stress a little bit about if you have 4 Storm players, like if you have Grant, like I don't personally, but Grant, Loiero, Katoa, and then like a Josh King or something like that, a Munster, whatever you've got. Warbrick is obviously another one. But we might be moving him on before then. We'll talk about that this week for sure. But a lot of these centres actually doing really well. And anything above that 45 mark is what we want. So Farnworth is on the brink of that. And then Manu will be up there for sure. Anyone under that, Tony Staggs, I think, is a sell. Just isn't able to produce the gun totals there. And you could trade Staggs to one of these guys with only a little bit extra cash that you need to get him. Gags will probably fall off a cliff a little bit. He seems to do that. Last year, that happened to him. He started really well and then fell away. But Knights have been playing better. I think Brayley being out of that squad now is really damaging to his scores for sure, and the Knights longer term. But yeah, Hammer, he's a sneaky one because he's got that wing fullback and the centre duel. So he's the best option there around that one. And then you've got obviously Jack Bird who can cover edge and centre, but edge is a pretty busy position at the moment for sure. So Joey Manu comes into effect soon, I think, but Roosters definitely need to improve before we look at him. And I think Jackson Barlow there, if Roosters aren't, he's getting, not lucky, he's playing really well, but he's getting lucky to get a bunch of tries and get plenty of options down that right side. But if the Roosters are going to continue to play like they did last week, then he's not going to be a clear top guy there. The wing fullback position is probably the most interesting one out of all. You actually have a fair few guys that are averaging 50 plus. You got Latrell, Carraz, Walshy there, Asako, crazily enough. Lockie Miller at 56. That's been great. Dylan Edwards at 62 and Greg Marzhew at 65. So I think Greg, you can pop him probably down here in terms of best options, I would say, somewhere in that mid tier. Dylan Edwards has absolutely been amazing and he's improving year on year. We spoke about him just being more of a one-sided player and now he's popping up on either side. And with the Panthers doing so well there, I think Dealbags, I'm going to call him Dealbags Edwards, is going to be a cracking option as well, considering he's going to be just priced at just above that 50 mark with that massive score on the weekend. Obviously averaging now 62. He was in the mid-50s before that 98. But he's one of those guys that I think can continue to score well, along with the other guys in that team, the Isaac Tungors, the To'os there. Even Crichton's going to do pretty well, and Taruva as well. So, yeah, he's definitely one of those guys that you could lock in for consistent scores each and every week who won't play Origin. Is going to be very important through that middle period, and I wouldn't push you away from picking him up this week. Greg, the only reason I'm pushing you away from him is that he's a winger in a team I think that's going to struggle a little bit more. He'll still score a bunch of tries and he'll have those games where he has 200 metres plus and 10 tackle breaks, but he'll also have lighter games. So on the weekend he scored a double and got 48. So there'll be games like that where he doesn't get that second try and he gets like a 30, and that's a little bit frustrating there for sure. Reece Walsh obviously just looks amazing at the moment, so he'll be one of those keepers at the end of the year, maybe like a 5th or 6th guy, especially when you got Teddy coming back into the fold eventually and will be back up into the 50s. You imagine Tom Trbojevic ends up somewhere around that 50 mark as well, I'd say. Latrell will pop up a little bit more. Carraz probably stays similar. Asako should fall out of that 50s mark there as well. So, yeah, definitely a bunch of good options there. Brian To'o, one of those cheaper guys that you could pick up this week. Ruben Garrick out. Unfortunately, he'll drop down in his, obviously, scoring. His average there at 41, but shouldn't be playing likely next week as well. So, wing fullback position is a bit of a tough one over the next bunch of weeks, and I know a lot of us are moving on, or hoping to move on. Warbricks, the Chesters, Sloan eventually, those and Perham eventually, those type of guys. So it's going to be a very interesting position, and it has the ownership percentages there as well. So Warbrick just under 50% of total teams, Hammer just under 50 as well. So he's really hurt the non-owners. There's plenty that have him there, and still lots with Teddy. I think a bunch would have traded as well. I think that's as active teams after round 5, which should hopefully change over the next day or so. But that is that. So let's move on down to the buy planner here and speak about the next 3 rounds, because that's the video we're going through here. And from round 7, so Sharks come off that bye and they have a nice clean run all the way to round 13 now. But, Dragons are sitting there with Raiders, Roosters, Dogs over the next 3, so nothing too bad. I think they should have some closer contests, and that should be okay for Sloaney. Jack Bird, I still think is a cracking option, guys. So you get him all the way through, Jackie B, all the way through to round 16, which is great news. So he's definitely someone on my radar over the next few weeks for sure. Someone that I could slot in that I don't have to worry about in 13 or 14, which is going to be really important. You're looking at the Eagles there, and they've got Storm, Tigers, Titans. So again, should be okay over the next 3 weeks. If you do have Trbojevic, I would be holding. If you have Garrick there, I would be holding, considering he's likely going to be back for Tigers and Titans, which I think will be good for him. He could come out and get you 70s and 80s, and if you trade him out there, you'll be very upset. Panthers there, Knights, Rabbitohs, Tigers. Again, some good good matchups there. Even against the Rabbitohs, it's going to be a fun clash. But against the Knights without Brayley this week is a bit of a tough one. And I think Cleary could do great again. He'll be my captain as always. Roosters there, Sharkies, Dragons, Warriors. So you're looking at really some decent games there as well. This one will be tough, and then it gets a little bit easier from there. So if you are holding a bunch of these Roosters players, Suaalii, for example, I'm looking at potentially holding him. He didn't actually play too bad last week. There was a few times there Remus actually played really good defense and was able to catch him around the legs and do a good job. The Eagles one's an interesting one, guys. So they have the bye in round 14, and they have a bit of a rest from there in terms of buys, which is good. So a few games there, they'll get him for round 15 and 16 at a minimum there. And, that's obviously helpful having someone like those guys for that Knights game in round 13. Titans there, so they'd obviously just had their bye of recent times, but they do have in 13 as well. So the next few teams are all out in 13, so keep thinking of that. Especially, this week we can get 3 trades, so being able to make the correct trades is going to be really important this week. And having one eye on round 13, 14, 15, 16, I think is going to be super important when you make those trades. And have a look at when they have their bye. Obviously, Raiders next week, and the Storm in round 9, so something to think about for sure. Along with potential Knights replacement hooker, whether it's Crossland or something like that, at a pretty awkward sort of low price there in the mid 350s, 360s, then him having his buy in 10 and 14, is that too many buys in that period, or do you move him on in round 14 if you were to make that trade? Something to think about. Okay, let's look at Sharks then. So Sharks come back and they've got Roosters, Dogs, Cowboys. So decent games, to be honest. If you're looking at someone like Heinzie, and then Dolphins in round 10, Seagulls, Knights before their bye in 13. So well, you make our decision on Heinzie, what's going to happen with Origin if he does make it, but if he'd have a bye anyway in round 13. So if you're trading him in, it's for these 6 clean rounds, and you can make a decision from there. Tigers, a big worry this week. Anyone you have in Tigers, I think the only ones worth holding, it would have been Dewey, but people are going to be looking at Appy Coruscant, but they do have a bye in round 13 anyway. I've seen a few people talking about Appy. Isaiah Papali'i is another one as well that I think, with their buy in round 13 is a bit annoying, but you would, if you get him in round 8, you get him all the way through to 13. He plays in that 14 one, which is going to be important. And then, potentially you have a lot of edges in your team anyway that can cover, considering you can only have 13 in your playing roster for round 13. But you have him playing in round 16, which is a big win. So Isaiah Papali'i either in round 8 or clearly in round 14. Raiders there, a bit of an awkward one, as I said, with Tarpany, but if you get Tarps in round 9, you get him all the way through to 16. So he's an interesting one to look at in the mids. Other than that, not too many guys to potentially hold. We'd probably get Xavier Savage back in 9 or 10, but is that a bit of a risk? I think so. Storm guys, so we've got the Eagles in round 7, Warriors in round 8. So if you've got any of those guys, I think they're clear holds, even potentially Warbrick, but up to you if you want to trade him or not. I think most of his money-making potential days is over. So 2 games there and then the bye in round 9. So something to think about with those guys. They have a bye in 9 and 13. So any of those guys are going to miss 2 of the next 7 games. Something to think about. And then you've got the Knights there. So again, with Brayley out, makes it a little bit tough. But Panthers, Cowboys, Eels is a bit of a tough stretch. So outside backs, avoid potentially bringing them in. I understand why you'd be holding Miller. He'd probably be there for the whole season. They have a bye in 10 and 14. Dolphins there, we've got Bunnies, Titans, and Raiders, and it's an okay run for them. I'm not too stressed about guys like Hamiso, but this could be a tougher game for him for sure up against the Bunnies in this one, considering he scored a bit low against the Dragons when they got beat. If they were able to get beat here by the Bunnies, then potentially a lower score for Hammer again, but should do well against Titans and the Raiders, you'd imagine. For the Warriors there, you've got Cowboys, Storm, Roosters. So pretty tough for them, but I think this week will be fine. They probably beat the Cowboys, considering they had a matchup against them in round 3 and 7. It is funny how they've done this with the draw, but a good one this week, and you can kind of look at them. But Storm, Roosters, Panthers, those 3 games after that. So outside backs would be a bit of a stretch, but guys like Sean Johnson, I don't think I'm worried about, considering his base at the moment. And Warriors playing pretty good. That was a really fun game to watch, actually, that Knights and the Warriors game. I enjoyed that. Apart from the injuries. So, Dogs are next. So, Eels, Sharks, Dragons for them. They have their bye in round 13. So, you get them all the way through to them. They play 16 as well. So, really, if you're holding Dogs guys all the way through till their next bye, after round 16, would be the play with them. And, their run over the next 3 games, it's fine. If you've got a bunch of their outside backs, Alamottis and stuff, I'd just be clearly holding. Eels, Sharks is going to be a bit tough, but Dragons, Raiders, Warriors, Titans after that, I think Alamotti's a clear hold all the way through that, with centre being tough and him a bit of an awkward price, so you'd have to go up a couple $100K to get a good one, an even better one than Alamotti. And I think Kikau being back, they're going to be able to use him as a bit more of a decoy runner and get some early ball for Alamotti. Without Addo-Carr is going to be a bit of a worry, and I'm interested to see who they're going to pop on that wing, whether it's Braden Burns or what they do with that one. Eels, so we get them all the way to 14, guys, and we said how nice their draw was coming up. Bulldogs, they do have the Broncos in round 8, which will be harder, but Knights, Titans, Raiders, and Rabbitohs and Cowboys to finish. So I think Moses can do really well. Dill Brown as well, but he doesn't look as good as he was last year. Getting the odd try assist, but still scoring under 50 in most weeks. Cowboys, I'm just worried about them. I wouldn't be bringing in many of their attackers. Guys like Val Holmes are going to be fine. Warriors, Knights, the next couple, but then Sharks, Roosters. So Cowboys need to improve, that's for sure, and they aren't going that great at the moment. And then you've got the Broncos to still have an easier round here in Titans, and then they need to bounce back after their loss. Walsh, you'll still do well. And then you've got Eels, Rabbitohs, which is a bit tough, and then Seagulls, Storm, Panthers. So Broncos has been a very interesting run for them, considering how well they did at the start of last year and then how they fell away. I really want to watch how they come out of this for sure. And then Bunnies, clearly they're running all the way through to 16, so both of these teams do. And then I'd be moving on a lot of their players in round 16 there. But the Bunnies to finish, so Dolphins, Panthers, Broncos. So it doesn't really get much easier for them. Probably a slightly easier one here with the Dolphins than what they had against the Storm and the Roosters and the Eagles. But they were able to dominate Bulldogs, and can they keep up that form over the next few weeks? That will be interesting to watch them, and especially how they play against the Panthers. And can Dolphins show the form like they did last week against the Cowboys, or will that fall away against the Bunnies in this one? So I hope that was really informative. I hope that helped you out with your decisions coming into Team List Tuesday this afternoon. Thank you so much for watching these videos. I know there's going to be 3 out today, which is a lot, but a condensed week makes it pretty tough to fit all the content I want in. So as I said, hope this is important. Catch you later.